All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Well, folks, round number one of the college football playoff is in the books. And as it was a pedestrian type opening round to this college football playoff, really not that much, excitement, not that much, in regards to nail biting competitions. Maybe things will be different in round number two as we're shifting from on campus settings to neutral bowl sites, neutral site bowl games rather, the rest of the way. The weather was a big time factor in round number one. We saw the cold in Happy Valley at Penn State. The same thing in South Bend, where Notre Dame hosted Indiana, and then, of course, when Ohio State hosted Tennessee at the Horseshoe. That's not going to be the case for this round and going forward for that matter, because three of the four games here in the second round are going to be played indoors. But nonetheless, we've got the first of the four games taking place this Tuesday night, and of course, a triple header worth of action this Wednesday on New Year's Day, as it's all about the battle to get to the college football semis. Now, I want to start off with the Fiesta Bowl, which is going to take place this Tuesday, as you have the sixth seeded Penn State Nittany Lions taking on the third seed Boise State Broncos, the Mountain West Conference champions. Now, you look for Penn State. They come into this game heavily favored. They're favored by 11 and a half points over the Broncos. We just saw Penn State win their first ever college football game, college football playoff game, about a week or so ago when they knocked off SMU at home. And now the question is going to be whether or not that this Nittany Lions defense is going to be able to slow down the phenomenal Boise State running back, Ashton Jeanty. When you think about the season that Ashton Jeanty has had so far this season, we're talking about nearly 2,500 yards on the ground and 29 rushing touchdowns for the Heisman runner up. And for me, one question is going to be for Jeanty: how much of a chip is he going to have on his shoulders after finishing second in the Heisman balloting to Colorado's Travis Hunter? That's going to be big. The matchup between Jeanty and this Penn State run game, because the Nittany Lions were seventh in the nation this season versus the run. And I guarantee you that all eyes are going to be on Ashton Jeanty trying to slow him down. But I'll tell you like this: let's say, for the sake of argument, that Penn State does have some success in stopping Ashton Jeanty early. Do not expect Boise to go away from getting him the football, because it's one of those with Jeanty. The longer the game goes along, the better that he gets running the football. The only way that I see the Broncos going away from giving the football to Ashton Jeanty is if they fall behind by 17 points, 21 points, something like that, to that effect, and they have to go into passing mode, which would then make them one dimensional. That's the only way that I think that Boise gets away from him. But with that said, I think it's going to be important for first and second down when Boise's offense is on the field, and of course when Penn State's defense is on the field, because Penn State wants to keep Boise in second and long, second and 13, second and 15, third and 14, you name it, because that's going to make them one dimensional. So first down is going to be so important between this Boise offensive line and this Penn State defensive line as well. I look at the combo of Maddox Matson at quarterback for Boise State, along with wide receiver Cameron Camper. Why? Because I do believe Boise's going to have to take some shots in this game. They're going to stick with running with Ashton Jeanty. I truly believe it. But I do think the Broncos are going to have to take some shots at some chunk plays. I think Boise's going to need to connect on about four, maybe five big chunk plays. And when I say chunk plays, 25 yards or more, okay, to kind of keep this Penn State defense honest, because it's one of those where you can expect the front seven of Penn State to be keying on Ashton Jeanty. And at some point, I do expect those safeties to kind of cheat up. So it's going to be one of those, if you're Boise State and you could see it and take advantage of it, you might have a couple of big plays, but it's one of those where you gotta make them count. Also, for me, if I'm Boise State, you look at Penn State's team. They've been starting slow for the most part this season, but as the game goes on, Penn State gets better, and we've seen it all year long. We saw them start slow against SMU last week. They had those pick sixes that really turned around the momentum of that contest, and of course, Penn State never looked back. Now, defensively for the Broncos, they do have 51 sacks this season. They are not, and I repeat, they are not going to be intimidated by Penn State in this one. You look at Jaden Vergen Morgan as well as Ahmad Hassanain rushing that passer. And again, just like how I said that it's going to be important for Boise on offense on first and second down, I think it's going to be important for Penn State on offense on first and second down as well, because it's one of those where you look at it, you got to say, hey, if the Broncos have the ability to pin their ears back and come after Penn State quarterback Drew Aller, they could force him into a turnover or two. But nonetheless, so much talent on this Penn State offense. They're going to go out there and establish their run game as well with Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen, that thunder and lightning combination. Tight end Tyler Warren is a matchup nightmare for every single opponent of Penn State this season. And I guarantee you the Broncos are going to be no different. I talked about this game several days ago, and I'm going into more depth about it right now. Very interesting scenario because Boise State has never lost at the Fiesta Bowl. And of course, their biggest of big wins came back in the 2007 version of this game when they knocked off Oklahoma 43-42. You think about Penn State, and the Nittany Lions have never lost when they've gone to the desert for the Fiesta Bowl as well. Of course, their biggest win in the Fiesta Bowl came back in the 87 Fiesta Bowl when they knocked off Miami to win the national championship. Of course, that was then, and this is now. I guarantee you, Bronco Nation is going to show up and show out for this game. Spencer Danielson, the fine head coach of this Boise program, he's going to have his team ready. Why? Because he's playing the us. He's going to play the us against the world card, and he's also going to play the zero respect card. And it's easy for him to play that card when your team is an 11 and a half point underdog. James Franklin will have his team ready to play. And I guarantee the Penn State faithful are going to make their way to the desert, getting out of the cold of Western Pennsylvania. I think this is going to be a phenomenal game. Two good football teams. For Penn State and James Franklin, he's trying to get, away from that mantra, we can't win the big game. And if you're Boise State, it's not just about you in this game. It's not just about the Mountain West. You are representing the entire group of five, the group of five that some of the big boys at the college football table feel like do not belong in this college football playoff. So Boise's going to go out there. They're going to give it everything that they have. And I think the same is going to be said for Penn State. But nonetheless, I really do think that Penn State's talent will show up and show out as this game progresses. And I am going to take the Nittany Lions to advance in this one and get to the Orange Bowl by the score of 31-20. Now, moving ahead to New Year's Day, and it starts in Atlanta in the Peach Bowl, as you have the fifth-ranked Texas Longhorns taking on the Arizona State Sun Devils, the champions of the Big 12 Conference. So just like it is and is going to be for Boise State, Arizona State, they are huge underdogs in this game in Atlanta. But I guarantee you, for head coach Kenny Dillingham, that ain't going to hurt the feelings of he and his crew. Now, Arizona State, you know what you're going to get. You're going to get a healthy dose of the human bowling ball at running back, and I'm talking about Cam Scatterbo. The Sun Devils are 3-2 when he is held under 100 yards this season, and they are undefeated when he gets more than 100 yards on the ground. So I guarantee you that Arizona State is going to be focused on getting him the football. Texas has to find a way to slow him down. And I'll tell you like this, it's not just about slowing down Cam Scatterbo. You have to go out there and tackle and wrap up. We saw it in the Big 12 championship game where Iowa State defenders were simply bouncing off of him. Got to have the gang tackling mentality if you're going to slow down this dynamic ball carrier. If Cam Scatterbo can get going in this game, it's going to take some pressure off of Sam Levitt and his Arizona State passing game. Of course, they no longer have the services of wide receiver Jordan Tyson. Didn't slow them down against Iowa State in the Big 12 championship game. Texas is going to be a little bit different. And speaking of the Longhorns, they need to go out there and start fast. We saw it when they beat Clemson in round number one. And I think they need to get back to that and have that same mentality because when you're heavily favored against a team like Arizona State, and this is no disrespect to Arizona State, and when you have so much on the line that both of these teams do, you want to go out there and put the pressure on them and take them out of their comfort zone. Because the longer that Arizona State hangs around in this game, that means the better the Cam Scatterbo is going to run. And as Cam Scatterbo goes, so do the Arizona State Sun Devils. Speaking of running the football, we know that Texas is all about running the football under head coach Steve Sarkisian, which means you can expect a heavy dose of Jaden Blue and Quay Weisner in that coming out of that backfield for Texas. Now, quarterback Quinn Ewers did not have his best game of the season against Georgia in the SEC championship game. Matter of fact, the two games against Georgia were not good for Quinn Ewers this season. I know he's dealing with the bad ankle right now, but he's got to play off of this running game and really cook. But nonetheless, I'm putting the onus more on this Texas ground game. Defensively, linebacker Anthony Hill, the de facto leader of this Texas defense. What is he going to do against the likes of Cam Scatterbo? That's going to be the matchup right there to watch, as well as Colin Simmons coming off of that edge. And he's going to be important because if Texas can win first and second down defensively and keep Arizona State behind the chains, that is going to give him the opportunity to come out there and tee off on Sam Levitt. 20 interceptions so far by the Longhorns defensively. And of course, if you're Texas, you are hopeful that your second trip to Atlanta in less than a month will be different than the first one when you lost to Georgia in the SEC championship game. I think this one is. I think Texas wins this one going away. And I like the Longhorns to advance to the Cotton Bowl by the score of 37-20. Now, moving on to the granddaddy of them all. And I know that both of these teams are in the same conference right now, but it's one of those where if you're an old school guy like me, and of course, it just happened a year ago, I still think of Oregon as a Pac 12 team or a Pac 10 team. And I think, it's still fitting that granted Oregon's in the Big Ten now, but you're still getting this quote unquote East versus West showdown in the Rose Bowl. Of course, this time around, it means so much more because a win here will see the winner go on to the Cotton Bowl for the semis, while, of course, the season will be over for the loser. Now, Oregon came into the college football playoff as the top seed, and this was a controversial one right here. Not because Oregon is the top seed. Oregon's the only undefeated team coming into the college football playoff. It's the fact that there was a possibility of them having to face Ohio State right out of the Big Ten here in the quarters. And why do I bring this up? Because a lot of people felt like Ohio State was probably like a top five team all season long, which they, for the most part, they were. But of course, they got dropped down in the pecking order. They lost their last game of the regular season to Michigan. Of course, did not get to the Big Ten championship game for what was expected to be the rematch with Oregon. And getting back to that, these two teams met about 2.5 months ago in Eugene, a game that was very winnable for Ohio State. But unfortunately, for their sake, they fell short as they lost by 1 point in Eugene. So you look at this. This to me, I think this is a rematch of all rematches right here. You got the Buckeyes, who look like they may have found their groove in round number one as they ran through the Tennessee Volunteers. So if you're Ohio State, you got to have confidence to say, "Hey, we went to Eugene. We lost to this team by 1 point." And for as bad as we looked, offensively at least, against Michigan to end the season, they really turned it up in round number one against Tennessee. And you want to keep that momentum going. And I think it starts with their quarterback, Will Howard. Will Howard is going to have to play like he played against Tennessee if Ohio State is going to go out there and win this game and also win the national championship, because I know that the Buckeyes are the number 8 seed coming in. To me, I think you throw the seedings out. It's all about getting into this tournament. And it's one of those where the Buckeyes, I really do feel when they're clicking, they have what it takes to beat anybody in the nation. But aside from Will Howard on offense, you expect Ohio State to get their ground game going with both Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson. They are both going to be important in this contest. And if Ohio State gets it going, Jeremiah Smith is a big time playmaker at wide receiver, folks. And the same could be said about one Emeka Egbuka. Now, this Ohio State defense, they've been stingy all season long. They have the top ranked defense in the nation. And it's going to be interesting to see the likes of Cody Simon and Sonny Styles for the Buckeyes going up against this Oregon offense. Now, the Ducks are going to be very well rested coming into this game, being that they did not have to face anybody in round number one. They got the bye. You look at quarterback Dylan Gabriel, a Heisman Trophy finalist. You look at Jordan James at running back, a phenomenal playmaker. And then defensively for head coach Dan Lanning, the Ducks can mix it up as well, as they were ninth in the nation this year defensively. You got some talent on that side of the football with linebacker Brian Betcher and, of course, defensive end Jordan Birch and Mateo Uyunglele. A lot of NFL caliber talent on the field for this contest in Pasadena between now these two conference foes. And of course, it is to be expected, like I've said before, to see conference foes meeting in the college football playoff, to see rematches and to see trilogies on the football field now and in the expanded conference era, and of course, the expanded college football playoff era. Both of these teams, in my opinion, have what it takes to win this tournament. But of course, only one of these squads is going to get to the Cotton Bowl for the semis. Ohio State lost by 1 point to Oregon in the regular season. I think Ohio State wins by 1 point this time around. And Ryan Day gets that monkey off of his back. And I'm going to take the Buckeyes in this one by the score of 24-23. And finally, the last quarterfinal matchup that will take place New Year's night down in New Orleans at the Superdome. And you're talking about the Sugar Bowl, where you got the seventh ranked Fighting Irish of Notre Dame taking on the champions of the Southeastern Conference in the Georgia Bulldogs. Georgia comes into this contest favored by only a point and a half, but out of all of the teams that had a first round bye in the playoff, Georgia is the only team that is favored so far heading into their game. And why is Georgia only favored by a point and a half? If the Bulldogs are going to make it three national championships in the last 4 years, they're going to have to do it without quarterback Carson Beck. Of course, Beck suffered that arm injury on the last play of the first half of the SEC championship game against Texas when he was trying to throw the Hail Mary. The Texas defender's arm was pulling his arm down. And of course, he's done for the season now due to that injury. So now Kirby Smart has to go with Gunnar Stockton. But you know what? If you're Georgia, really no problem. And the reason why I say it is this: we saw Gunnar Stockton come off the bench to help rally Georgia to the win over Texas in the SEC championship game. Gunnar Stockton had to have gotten some confidence from that, and of course, this Georgia team got a lot of confidence from Gunnar Stockton in that one as well. But it wasn't just about Gunnar Stockton, because I think the Georgia team rallied around him. Everybody stepped their games up on both sides of the football. And I think everybody knows that they're going to have to do it again. Also, it was so important, in my opinion, for Georgia to have won that game. Why? Because you got some additional time if you're Kirby Smart and offensive coordinator Mike Bobo to get some more reps for Gunnar Stockton in game situations and also in practice situations against this Georgia defense to get him ready for this one. It's not like the Bulldogs had to come out there and play a game the next Saturday. That might have been a different tale for Georgia had they have lost that game. But nonetheless, you look at it right now, you got to go with Gunnar Stockton at quarterback if you're Georgia. You're going to lean on your running game, of course, with Nate Frazier and Trevor Etienne. The Georgia wide receivers got to step up, because we saw a bad case of the drops for the most part of the season, which really hindered the Bulldogs in some games. Defensively, CJ Allen and crew, can they slow down this Notre Dame offense? That's going to be big right there as well. Infinity, what's going on, man? Definitely. Listen, we got to show each other love. We got to support each other. Thank you for chiming in as well, my man. Um, but I'll say this about Notre Dame. They've been a different team, and they've been a team on a mission ever since the Northern Illinois loss. However, this is going to be the Fighting Irish's biggest test of the season because you look at Georgia, they haven't been as dominant defensively as they have been in years past under Kirby Smart. But Georgia's one of those teams, they know how to bring it when the lights are on. And we saw it against Texas in the SEC championship game. You're going to see it again come New Year's night down in New Orleans in the Sugar Bowl, trying to slow down this Notre Dame offense rather. And I think what Georgia's going to try to do, because you think about Riley Leonard at quarterback, more of a runner than he is a thrower. He's more of an athlete than he is a thrower of the football. So I think Georgia's going to try to heat him up and try to put him in passing only scenarios and make Riley Leonard beat this Georgia defense with his arm. But I'll tell you like this, Notre Dame defensively, they're no slouches either. Marcus Freeman is going to have his team ready to play. That's a very feisty fighting Irish defense that he has with the likes of Jack Kaiser and Xavier Watts. But the loss of Riley Mills will be big. We saw Riley Mills injure his knee in the victory over Indiana. And you're talking about a big part of their defense on that defensive line. And without him, I'm not sure if Notre Dame is going to be able to consistently stop the Georgia run game. I think this is going to be a paint swapping, physical type game. A lot of speed on the field, especially defensively for Notre Dame and, of course, Georgia. The first team to get to 20 points, I do think, will be the ones who wins this game. The over under is 45 and a half. I'm going with the under on this one. And I am going to take Georgia to beat Notre Dame and get to the Orange Bowl by the score of 20-17. So, folks, those are my picks for the quarterfinals of this college football playoff. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank each and every one of you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you like what you saw and heard on this podcast, please feel free to like it as well as subscribing to this channel. Also, throughout the college football playoff, I'll definitely be talking after the game. So you can check me out. I'm not going to do it Tuesday night after the Fiesta Bowl, but I will do it on New Year's Day as far as recapping all of the action from Penn State and Boise in the Fiesta Bowl. I'll be doing the same thing throughout the day after the Peach Bowl with Texas and Arizona State, after the Rose Bowl with Ohio State and Oregon, and of course, after the Sugar Bowl with Notre Dame and Georgia. Also, if you are on Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. And also, there's a sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now, you can check it out. Drop a line to be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. Infinity Art, trust me, I'm going to keep checking you out. Definitely appreciate your support. And Happy New Year to you and everybody, all of your loved ones around you. And once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin. I'm signing off and I'm saying thanks once again for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. Be well and enjoy round number 2 of the college football playoff. Have a good one, everybody.